Record. So it is time. Recording in progress. We just got our note. So, friends, it's so good to be with you. I was wondering today, has anybody ever had a perfect experience? Have you ever had something in life that just like the stars and the moon aligned? For me, it was a dinner that Laura and I had down on the Riverwalk in San Antonio at La Mansion del Rio in Las Canarias, back when it was a good restaurant before it got bought out. And in the Wayback Machine there, I was a young man and I had a good job and I spent way too much money. I can't recommend it. I was not a good steward of God's money in that moment. But the chef knew how to use truffles well, and who knew that this Texas boy liked things that took a week to make and infused with all this wonderful thing. And they played this flamenco guitar thing, and Laura was so beautiful. And no matter how long the evening lasted, it wasn't enough, right? I felt that again this week as I was preparing today to talk to you about Luke. No matter how much time we go into what we're about to talk about today, no matter how hard we try to capture the moment, I can spend a lifetime in this text and never fully sound the depth of it, never fully understand or grasp the wisdom of it, never fully know how deeply it can transform my soul and my life and draw me closer to God. But I hope that whether you've been with God and a friend of God since the day you were born and had a long journey with the Lord, or if you're new to faith and recently discovered the grace that God can afford for you, I hope that as we look at these words together and we share that we have an experience that is worthy, because unfortunately, friends, due to time, it's going to feel like we're going to eat some fast food here as we kind of go through things. But I'm gonna risk slowing down a couple of times and going deep into these texts, knowing that I may not be able to get all the way through the slides, but to highlight some fine points. So today, unlike other times where we kind of read with some detail, I'm going to be a little more in the slides today, and I want to really sound out some of the beautiful parts. If you haven't read these parts of Luke, oh, friends, don't leave here today without just taking a few moments before or after, even while I'm talking. Just read it. Just read it. It's not what we don't know about it that matters. It's the words Jesus says that will change your life, and it still applies into this day, okay? Got a little housekeeping items before I get too far down the road. I think all of you have signed up for Ogdos by now. Yes, please shake your head and act like yes, or yes, Pastor Brad, I will do so before I go, right? You can also get your phone out and do that while we're right here. And there's something for everyone to do, no matter what your skill level is. Everyone can participate somehow. So please do that, and feel free to sign up your spouse, even if they're not here right now. They can help too. The other thing is just to remind you of some of the fun things we've got coming up just right around the corner. Ash Wednesday is not very far off at all, just right over the horizon there, that first Wednesday in March. And just a reminder, on that particular Wednesday, we won't meet here. We'll be encouraging everyone here to go to the Ash Wednesday services. We're also going to do Ashes to Go, where people who may not feel comfortable yet being in a worship service, or who, due to this schedule, want to come by during the day and receive ashes imposed to have them all day long, they'll be able to drive by, and there will be clergy persons there to administer ashes. In fact, right out here in the front near where the pumpkin patch normally is, and people can drive by and have those. We've got lots of other events. I know there are, I think, still a few tickets in the balcony for the Energy City musicians and their concert on Saturday night, lots of things. But check out our website for all the different activities. There are many blessings that abound for you in the life of the church at this season. So it's a fun time as things are speeding back up in the life of the church as we kind of get going again. So I encourage you to look at all those. But as we begin, if there are no questions, let's just have a little time in prayer. God of grace, God of mercy, and God who loves us so much that you bless all the meals we eat. Those that are savored, where every morsel is something wonderful. Those that are fast food that just seem to have to go too quickly. But also, Lord, you remind us that what feeds our soul is what comes from the bread of life, your word fully expressed through the person of Jesus, that can make a difference in who we are and transform even our inner thoughts and desires so that we draw ever closer to you. Fill our hearts this day. Help us see back to those times of Jesus to experience afresh what he spoke into the world and how it changed everything. Help us to live again the grace, the mercy, and love on full display in this one person, your Son, God in flesh, who changes everything. Amen. Amen. The last week I shared with you, we got as far as chapter 5, verse 16, and we got to a story. And I said, have you ever told a story with a group of friends where you're kind of all in the know, and you say something like, do you remember the time with the people and the place and we did the thing? Right? And everybody knows what you're talking about, but everybody on the outside's like, what? Right? Also, too, I think I pointed out that sometimes we get caught up in Luke, wanting Luke to have our concerns, right? I want to see, March 6th, 1972, and what happened on that day, right, at a specific time, preferably, 8:44 in the morning. And if you'd give me a time zone, that would even be better, right? A specific location, even better. I want down to like the minute and seconds of longitude and latitude would be helpful, right? Here, we don't get that, right? We get in verse 17, one day while he was teaching, Pharisees and teachers of the law were sitting near. So we get this kind of, again, we saw this just previously. But you remember in the little story right before this one, we get Jesus sending someone to a priest, and you get him doing some mighty miracles now. And we don't know exactly what causes all the Pharisees and the teachers of the law and others to come down to Galilee, right? We don't know what makes them all kind of descend from up in the city to come see him, but we know that they're trying to figure out who Jesus is, right? So if we'll turn to the next slide, I want to give you a little shorthand for understanding some groups you're going to get introduced to in Luke, okay? Pharisees, Scribes, and Sadducees, right? How many of y'all have heard of these terms? Right? You have if you've been around the church. How many of you know precisely what these terms mean? Right? Very few, because they didn't know either. It's kind of something applied to people a little bit, and there's some ambiguity, right? So the thing to remember is they're all Jews, right? They like each other somewhat, okay? But I don't know if you've ever known, there are people from time to time who are in the same kind of group, but do you know sometimes people disagree? I know that's a shock to you, right? But it happens. So a Pharisee is very religious, very litigious, and they think the way to solve every problem is to find the specific rule in the rule book of Leviticus or Deuteronomy, Numbers 2, and to implement it precisely. Yeah, that's another topic, though. We can talk about that later. And they're intent on keeping every rule of the law. Okay, so they're going to be. I mean, that's their fundamental intention. Although often people of means, because if you're going to keep all the laws, you got to have the stuff to do it with. Right? So I know we kind of take it for granted, but you got to be middle class or higher to be a Pharisee. If you're low class, you can't be bothered with all the laws you're trying to eat, right? And for that, just see the prodigal son, right, who's willing to go be in pig slop, right? Not currently in power, though. This is a big thing, right? They're on the outs. The Romans don't like them. Okay? They're hopeful for Davidic promise and the intervention of God in the liberation of Israel, right? So they're all in on miracles, the divine, and all that. The other big thing is when they're encountering Jesus, they think Jesus is one of us. He's the dude. Okay? So they're all in on Jesus, right? Until Jesus talks and does. And then they're, whoa, 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 whoa. What are you talking about? They hope, and that's why they get so mad at him. Because it's not the Messiah they expected. All right? The scribes, they're human Xerox machines. Their job is day in, day out, anywhere from 10 to 15 hours a day, as long as there's sunlight. So sometimes as little as about 12. But remember, it's closer to the equator. They sit there and they just simply transcribe the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, from one copy to another copy. Any yot or tittle, which is like any dot or punctuation, would be in English how you would say it, that is different, would be cause for great alarm. So they're not really able to think creatively. And they're obsessed also with, like they kind of have a human Xerox machine. And I'm not trying to be too cruel here. I'm not trying to talk about, sometimes they might miss the people and the need of the people due to their need to get the text. Yeah. Right. You're going to also then have the Sadducee. Now, you're not going to have them in today's story yet. You're going to see them later on. But you need to know, if you think of Sadducees, the way I always remember it is it starts with an S and it means a sellout, right? Today, if you talk to somebody and you call somebody a sellout, they think that means they're a hit because they sell out everything. If you talk to people in an older generation, that means a person who's willing to put their virtue aside to then make a profit, right? That they give up the real art to go make a profit. Well, that's the way I mean it when I'm talking about the Sadducees. So the Sadducees are willing to sell out their faith and give up on some detail to get along with the Romans, okay? They're going to be in Jerusalem and in Caesarea Maritima, and the ones in power. Herod is definitely a Sadducee. They've also taken up this mindset, well, if you can't beat them, join them, right? They're going to have gymnasium. They're going to have baths. They're going to have plumbing. They're going to have all the things of modern cities that the Romans are developing that's changing the Near Eastern world. And they're going to still be people of faith, but yeah, don't talk to me. It's just like, well, there's all these religions out there and they all have a pantheon of gods and we have our God. And yeah, I mean, I'll do some pious things, but just don't bother me with real religion or a God who does anything. So when the Pharisees talk about the resurrection to the Sadducees think they're nuts. But just remember, when you hear the Sanhedrin, the vast majority of the Sanhedrin are going to be your Sadducees, and they're going to be the people who are in power because the Romans won't let anyone who won't bless their doings and taking all the money out. When you're a tax collector, who's a tax collector going to be? The Sadducee, right? I'm just going to tell you, right, if you have an occupied country and one group is selling out to help the group that's there occupying, how do you think the other people think about them? Yeah, that's how they felt about the Sadducees, okay? So you see is that a shorthand, right? And see what I did with there? The scribes wouldn't like shorthand. So that was a little joke in the slide. Anyway, all right, on to the next slide. All right. So as we set this, we have the teachers of the law. We have the Pharisees. I joke, the feds they said there, because they make a big deal. They came all the way down from Jerusalem, right? So the feds came down to check out what's going on. And they're trying to find out what's up with this country boy out there in Galilee at this little fishing nowhere, Capernaum, and what's happening. All right. And so you have this interesting text in 5:17 that the power of the Lord was with Jesus to heal. All right, so game on. I mean, like, that's awesome, right? What a great text. And then we're told that some men come with a friend and they break through the roof. So to set it up for you, Jesus is in one of those houses that the slides from last week show you, one of those houses built out of those dark stones that are around there, relatively poor. But such a crowd had gathered, and you heard about this last week with all those people on the beach, the people that wouldn't let Jesus go, and all these things. So the crowd has swarmed. They can't get their friend in before Jesus, so they literally peel back the tiles on the roof and break through the roof to lower him down before them. Now, it's not like this big, it's probably like 10 feet, but it's still a kind of an impressive work that they get up there and do that. The thing that's really kind of fascinating comes then in 1819, them breaking through, but also in 20, when Jesus saw their faith, he forgave the man's sin. That becomes very important for us these days, right? People often ask me, why do we baptize children, right? We baptize children because it's our faith as the believers counted for the child until the child is able to accept for themselves, just as Jesus counted for this man who was unable to answer for himself. He was able to forgive sin and to give them righteousness, you see. So again, it's out of a biblical place. We don't just kind of do it because it's nice to do, right? It's out of the Bible. So it's a beautiful part here. And then Jesus, to demonstrate his total authority, then here in verse 24, heals the man and tells him to get up and walk, and he does, and he goes. And so I'm assuming most of y'all have heard the story, right? It's in the Gospels, all of them, right? So the part that isn't is the question. And this is where we see Luke's voice. It's the question that Luke puts in the Pharisees. And I think it's to show us something that was important at the time, but also to something too important to the church that was going on in the time of Luke. In Luke, there's this in 5:21, right? Who is this speaking blasphemies? Do you hear the question? Who can forgive sins but God alone? Okay, do you understand the problem, right? Psalm 51 says, all sins are against God and God alone. We covered this some back when we talked about David. But I mean, if I stand up here and I want to let y'all know, in the name of Brad Morgan, all of your sins are forgiven. In fact, all of your debts are paid. So skip your mortgage payment this month. Don't worry about the IRS, and your credit cards are free and clear. Right? Oh, somebody on Zoom's like jumping up and down. No, not really. I'm just playing. But right? I mean, how far will that? I mean, that and $5 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if I was serious about that, eventually y'all would be kind of intervening with Laura and having a conversation. Eventually, y'all would ask me to go see somebody, and if that didn't work, you'd get somebody with one of the funny codes. Right? I mean, that's crazy. Who can forgive sin? When I want to tell you, the Pharisees are with him to a point. For them, that's not how this works. He can't do that. Also, too, there's a requirement. Sin requires sacrifice. So how can he forgive a sin? Even if he could forgive sin, how can he forgive somebody's sin without the appropriate sacrifice? And for everything, there's a different set of rules. And aren't they going to be out of business? Right? I mean, there's all kinds of things going on in their mind, but the question is real and it's existential for them. C.S. Lewis, in his book, Mere Christianity, that I'd highly commend if you've never read it, it's a wonderful book. He points this dilemma out. This is a quote here from him on page 53 of the version I have. We are faced then with a frightening alternative. This man we are talking about either was and is just what he said, or else a lunatic or something worse. He'll go on to say, you really can't have it both ways, right? Luke presents it in a way he's one or the other, but he can't be both. So I put it out there. It's part of what Luke brilliantly sets up for us, because we have to make the leap of faith pretty early in the book, or we've got to do something. Okay? So it's there. It's going to be the core of what ties this week together, and why I want you to know about the Pharisees, because of that important question. Who is this? Who can forgive sins? And so what I'm going to argue for you in general, in all of my classes, is that the divinity of Christ that some in the 70s and 80s said was a late kind of addition, that just is ignorance of the text, and bad understanding of Greek. And you have to do a lot of stuff to kind of get there. The earliest Christians, due to the experiences they had, were all in on the divinity of Jesus. And I submit to you, as proof, the Bible. like they wouldn't have written it down this way if they weren't all in on the divinity of Christ. They didn't know what to do with it completely for a couple hundred years to sort out the Trinity, but they were all in from the beginning. So just wanted to share that with you. And that's where most modern scholarship is, by the way. So I'm not on my own on that one. Write it down and give it to me at the end, because I got a lot in the steak to eat today. All right, you ready to keep going? All right, so let's go to the next one. There's a little part here at the end about the new and old coexisting. And Levi is a contrast to the story we read last week. So where the disciples have this kind of process where Jesus opens their eyes through the 2 boats of fish, Levi follows the tradition that is in the other Gospels, where Jesus walks up and he says, what? Follow me, right? And what do they do? They follow, right? They drop everything and follow, right? But remember, that's not what happens initially, right? And so it's different. Now, when you read those other Gospels, they say it did happen like that, but there's a little more detail. Levi is meant to be a contrast, because what is Levi? If you read here in verse 27, right? He's a tax collector. He's a Sadducee. Like, he's a bad dude. Right? Right. Who's your favorite tax collector? Y'all know the little song about him. He's a wee little man, right? I mean, he's like that kind of guy, right? And we're told here that Levi just up and follows him. And then Levi throws this big banquet. And there's a bunch of tax collectors, right? And others sitting at the table with him. And in verse 30, the Pharisees and Scribes came and then complaining, why do you eat and drink with tax collectors? Why are you doing this? And this most important line, I think, in there in 532, I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners to repentance, for the heart of who Jesus is and what his ministry is, right? And they ask this kind of mocking question, because that's kind of in the Pharisees' nature, about, hey, John's disciples are doing this, right? They're fasting. And he says, how can you fast when the bridegroom is with you? All right? Who's the bridegroom? Right? The one who is coming to save the world, the Messiah, the Davidic promise. He says, I'm it. Right? He has forgiven sin, and now he has said he is the bridegroom with them. Okay? A good Pharisee is getting very nervous at this point, unless they had experienced something, right? What we know is those that have experienced something have kind of changed their tune. They've been overcome with amazement and awe. They've gotten on board. But even sometimes, and I'm going to look up because I don't want y'all thinking, I'm not talking about y'all, right? I'm talking about those other churches, right? I mean, you've never met anybody I know who had a way of thinking about the faith that kept them from actually witnessing or experiencing the movement of God in people who were lost and hurting, right? Where they let the practice of religion get in the way of the heart of religion. We've never ever seen that, right? Right? Where the practice kept the heart of Jesus from being shown. If not, I can send you my emails, right? I mean, like, I'm just saying, but that's kind of what's going on here at its core. And Levi breaks that down, and then you get to this pinnacle here at the end with this conversation about new wineskins and old wineskins. And can you put what's old? You get a comment about a garment. Do you take a new garment and cut off a corner of the new to patch the old? And Jesus says, no, that's nonsense. It's ruining both garments. Right? And then he says, do you take this wine, right, and put it in an old, well, the old wineskin, if you were to fill it, it's already expanded to what it can hold. And what happens at the beginning of making wine is that it outgasses a lot and it expands a lot, even in that old lightly fermented wine that they had back then, and it's going to burst, right? And it's not going to keep. And the thing to know about wine back then is if you didn't have, and it's not like ours, it was significantly less alcohol by volume. But if you didn't turn something to wine, if you didn't ferment it a little bit, it wouldn't keep. And so water was not trustworthy place to place, and you could get real sick as you traveled. So it was kind of essential for people. So these kind of things are there. And friends, I have to do, that's already chapter 5, and I'm halfway through, and I got to get to, that's half of 5. And I've got to get to the end of 7. So you see what I said. So we'll see how we do. I'm going to try, though. All right. Yeah. I know. Where's, yeah. But I need a, was that Elisha, right, that stopped, or no, Elijah, right, that stopped the time. Yeah. So here we go. So now, here, for those of y'all who did 1st and 2nd Samuel, you'll appreciate the reference back to David here in early chapter 6. The Pharisees are there. They see Jesus peel back, break off some grain. He cracks it open. He feeds his disciples. And the Pharisees freak out because it's Saturday, okay? It's the Sabbath, all right? And they lose their mind, okay? And they're like, you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. Okay, and so they give it out, and he's there, and he then has the audacity to tell them, well, don't you know what David did? David gave out the bread of presence when he was traveling and his coworkers were hungry on the Sabbath. He's David? Okay, he's God, he's David, he's forgiving sins, he's eating the bread of presence. I mean, hint, hint, spoiler alert, right? He's either crazy or he's God in flesh, right? You can't have it both ways. And that's what's driving the Pharisees crazy, okay? Jesus pronounces then on verse 6:5, that the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath, right? Great. Then Jesus heals a man with a withered hand on the Sabbath as they're in synagogue. Okay, and remember, that's Saturday. We worship on Sundays because what is on Sunday? What was empty on the first day of the week? A tomb. We celebrate Easter every Sunday since all the way back, and when we think we got it off, back in the 1700s, we moved 11 days and people got mad and all that to make sure we got the right day, to make sure we're on that Sunday that's been there. But Sunday, the reason they waited, right, was they couldn't work on the Sabbath, so they couldn't take the oils to anoint the body. So, but synagogue happens on Sabbath, right, which was Saturday. So it's a different day. So important to note, just for those that get confused about that. So here he's doing what we know is his practice in verses 6 through 11. Of course, the scribes and the Pharisees, oh, is he going to do something? Hey, Billy Bob, is he touching that? You know, I mean, they're going after it and they're trying to do that. They literally are trying with this man with the withered hand to use Jesus's compassion against him to entrap him in a crime. It's kind of interesting. And Jesus knew what we're thinking, and we're told, and he says to them, in verse 9, is it lawful to do good or harm on the Sabbath, to save life or destroy? And he silences them. The scribes, he heals the man. The scribes and the Pharisees, how do you think that made them feel? I think on the emotion chart, right? They'd have been looking for the angry face, right? They kind of go on it. They're furious, and they are now plotting what to do with Jesus because they can't have this. Okay. So if we keep going, we're told here, and you're getting now into my very favorite part. I mean, it gets better, friends. And I know each one of those stories deserves its own class. So please read it and go look at those. But here in verse 12, chapter 6, verse 12, Jesus spends the night in prayer. He comes down the mountain, and he appoints 12 apostles after he gathers his disciples to him, right? So for instance, you'll notice whose name is not on here, who we just talked about, who dropped everything and followed Jesus. Do you see Levi's name on there? Right. So he's not an apostle, right? But he is a disciple, right? There are lots of disciples. Okay, the 12 are not an exhaustive list of the disciples following Jesus. Apostles, according to Luke, are 12 ones that Jesus sets apart to send out, okay? Now you're going to look at that list and you're going to say, well, Pastor Brad, Simon's on there twice. There are 2 Simons. And then you're going to look and you're going to say, who else is on there twice? Look at the end of the list. James the Greater, James the Lesser, and then also to Judas, right? Right? There were 2 Judases. How many of y'all know about the other one? No, they weren't brothers. Yeah, but there are 2 Judases. Yeah, son of James, right? That poor second Judas doesn't get a whole lot of airtime, you know. One guy gives you a bad name, a bad name, and nobody ever wants to be that name, right? So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, they did. Yeah, and the Judas, son of James, is there making sure they put it in. You know, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. I didn't do it. Yeah. So it's there, but I just want you to see that. But if you can, in that, let me set the stage, okay? So Jesus has gone up. He's come down. As he comes back down from a place of prayer overnight in the morning, he gathers all his disciples, and from them, there's about a dozen he draws nearer, and they're going to be the ones sent. And around them, you have kind of 3 groups. You have the apostles, the disciples, and then you have a vast crowd. Okay. I want to give you a preview, and not to ruin the book of Revelation for you, but if you ever want to fast forward and get the description of what heaven looks like, you have Jesus at the center, right? You have the apostles, the disciples, the martyrs, and the host of everyone else who put their faith in Jesus, right? So you get a creation of the New Jerusalem on the side of this hill there all the way back then, right? Now, please don't misunderstand. I'm not saying Luke was modeling his after John. I'm saying John of Patmos was modeling his after Luke's account of this event, right? Now, what's interesting, of course, in Luke's account is that in Luke's account, we're told here that he comes down with them, and in verse 17, he stands on a level place. It's often called, anybody's Bible has the Sermon on the Plain. You've heard of the Sermon on the Mount, the Sermon on the Plain. And there's some subtle reasons for this, in that there's some slight textual variations between here and Matthew. of what exactly is being said. But I want to show you that this great crowd is there, and I want to show you this kind of hill when you go there. This is Mount Arbol. It's one of many mounts that can be the place, but there's a kind of some people that want this to kind of be it, because what you can see is, you see how the hills there have plateaus? Like, can you imagine over here on this hill to the right? Capernaum's just literally like down here at the foot of this hill to the right. You could see they went up the hill, up the mount, right, about midway. That's where the crowd was. So anybody who was part of the crowd would call it what? The Sermon on the Mount, right? Jesus comes down from the top of the mount to the flat spot. What would he call it, right? It would be Sermon on a Plain, right? I mean, like, he went down to the flat spot, right? So, the geography kind of matters. The truth is, what we don't know is, was it, both Gospels, Matthew and Luke, tend to say it was kind of one big event outside. But we also know Jesus went place to place preaching and teaching. So is what we have that survives kind of the best of a kind of, I don't mean any disrespect, but like a stump speech that was given here, it was given there, it was given to go place to place? Or was it a one big event that was worthy of note? And I think there's a reason to think there was the one big event. It may have been building for quite some time before it was revealed in that way, but I think there's good reason for thinking that. If you go there with me today at the place where it was kind of cool, I got to preach at a spot that is where they built a church to say this is where the Sermon on the Mount happened. It's very beautiful. It was built by the Carmelite nuns. It wasn't built until 1929, and it was built because Mussolini gave them the money to put it in that place, and it was cheap land. So you're in the neighborhood, and it's got great vistas of the Galilean Sea there in front of you. But to say that's the spot, the sermon still sounded better there because, again, you're close, right? So it was a lot of fun. But just to share with you that it's there, I think that it's kind of a beautiful place. The other reason we want it to be on Mount Arbol, for those that are a little bit fun, is Mount Arbol is where Herod's dad won a great military victory that kind of got them in league with the Romans. And so there's kind of the Prince of Peace kind of outdoing Herod. It would be cool if the Sermon on the Mount was there, but I wish it said it in the Bible, like which mount, right? But we don't get that information. We just know it's on one and it had a flat spot. So here we go. For these, I just wanted to read them to you so you don't think I'm saying this to you, but that Jesus was saying this, right? I don't want anybody coming and getting mad at Pastor Brad. All right, but you're going to see that actually I should want you to get mad at me. All right, so let's go to the next slide. I decided to play with the sermon since we don't really know what do we do with the Sermon on the Mount, Sermon on the Plain, and how do we try to reconcile that? And you get into some interesting things. I thought that the fun is that most of us know the Sermon of Blessings, the Beatitudes, but often we kind of on Sundays, pastors tend to skip over the Sermon of Woes. And I think it's important to kind of read both. Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you, revile you, and defame you on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for surely your reward is great in heaven, for that is what their ancestors did to the prophets. Isn't it, right? Now, what does Matthew say? Blessed are the poor in spirit, right? So Luke puts a little more edge on it, right? You see how that's different? It's a little more existential. It's a little bit more where people live, if that makes sense. What the words coming out of Jesus's mouth are literally descriptive of the crowd to whom he speaks. It also, in Luke's account, is describing what they're going to need to go do what they're being called to do. Because what does Luke know? What are those people going to do? Friends, they are going to convert people to the ends of the earth, from the worst expression of cultural humanity imaginable to a way of grace and love. It is not for the squeamish or faint of heart. If you think anything about today is bad, I would be happy to let you read Suetonius's Lives of the Later Caesars. There's one. I've got a dozen others that I can let you read. You want to talk about a bad time, okay? Jesus picked a pretty hideous time to go into. I would submit to you that all the times have been pretty rough. People can be horrible to one another and do bad things. But Jesus entered that time of humanity and changed it all. You ready for the woes? Now remember, anybody fact checking me with the book there, with the Bible? I mean, I cut and paste these. I didn't I didn't write these. So you just know that. But I would stand behind Jesus's words though. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is what their ancestors did to the false prophets. Boom. Yeah. Right? There it is. Right? And then you just thought that was hard. But wait, there's more. Let's go to the next slide here. And for this, I'm just going to read a little bit. And I guess this will be kind of the end of sixes as far as we're going to get today. I had a plan for that, so I think that's what we're going to take. I just want you to hear it. And let's start in 6:27. But I say to you that listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you, and if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. But love your enemies, do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High. For he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back. Boom, right? It makes it impossible to be. She said it makes it hard to be a Christian. I want to say it makes it impossible to be a Christian without whose help? Yeah, you have to have Jesus's help to be a Christian. There's not really any other way to follow Jesus, right, than with the help of the Lord to do those things. The other thing to remember is we're being set up here to basically overturn the Roman Empire. And we're not going to do that without courage and without the help of the Holy Spirit helping us have a deep and abiding faith in Jesus throughout that ordeal. And it's going to involve a whole lot of people giving of their treasure, their life, their resources, as well as their time, energies, and effort, leaving home, leaving family to go and convert the world. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So it becomes the text that still launches 1,000 ships, and to this day, that still sends people around the world to do things they never thought imaginable, to love people they never thought they would know. Also, too, it brings reconciliation in families, and it helps heal wounded hearts. So it is, to me, again, the most perfect sermon, most perfect text ever. I don't know. That's why I just thought I'd read it, because I don't know how to talk about it other than to just let it speak. Because there are parts of the Bible I read it and I have to kind of get into it and I go, oh man, that's hard to follow. And then there are other parts I read that I perfectly know what they mean. And I'm like, oh gosh, I wish it didn't mean that. Like, man, I'm going to have to call a family member. I shouldn't have said that the other day, should I? Right? I mean, those kind of things. So it's there. There's also this parable that's more like a proverb. And on this slide here about the converting the Romans, I just want to draw this idea of a kind of blind person lead the blind, right? He's talking about the culture of the Judaism and the culture of the Roman Empire. And that if those who are Jewish lose their way and don't even care about people, right, and the love and grace God gave them, how can they lead this lost world around them without falling in a pit? Okay. And then there's the tree by its fruit, which that alone is again a whole sermon, a whole another 30 minutes or so. But just to get that this beautiful part of the passage, the good person out of the good treasure of the heart produces good. The evil person out of the evil treasure produces evil. For it is out of the abundance of the heart that the mouth speaks. And it's important to remember he's speaking to a crowd of people, of religious people, who he is claiming are behaving in ways that are evil because they're letting their religious practice stand in the way of healing people. Right? And anytime we do that, we fall into the same traps in our practice of even Christianity. I think he would be offended. Okay. So the great question of Luke comes here at the end of chapter 6, and this last slide is where we'll leave it today. Right? I had a couple more, but I just don't think I can get to 7 and without going way over. But you can see why. I mean, is this good or no? I mean, reread it at home. I really encourage you because it's amazing, and I can't do it full justice in the time. But this question here, man, anybody here been a parent? Right? Why don't you do what I tell you to do? Like I can help you, right? You ever said that to a child, grandchild, other person? Ever been at your? Here it is. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I tell you? Man, I wonder if Jesus doesn't ask that of us every day. Yeah. So he then tells the one that we all know that we've probably heard since nursery school about the rock and the sand. I was going to do images, but thinking about Harvey, I just no images of flooded houses, right? But he talks about putting the foundation in stone. The house will stand against anything and still be there. When you put it in sand without a foundation, it's just going to collapse, right? And those who hear but do not act are like those without the foundation. And then he finishes this and goes to Capernaum. There's so many cool things in 7, but we'll have to pick that up next week. Because I think I won't get there. All right, but I'll take questions now. I had questions. Linda had a question for me or a comment. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, that's a great quote. Don't become so heavenly minded that we're no earthly good. I think Jesus would be on board with that in general, especially from this particular message. I also think that I think what I love about Luke, and maybe it's a good reminder for us in our Christian faith. It's interesting to me that Luke puts a lot in questions. And questions that expose the failings of the people asking the question. They're kind of failing to get it, right? And so what I love is the way Jesus responds both with clarity, but actions also in parables, examples that don't need a kind of oh, now I figured it out with my head. Instead, it moves something we might get to know in our head to our heart so that we might feel what Jesus is trying to describe. And I think the great challenge of our Christian faith today is to kind of re-enliven and to re-understand that movement of wholeness of heart and mind and altogether of the feeling of the Christian faith, and that kind of deep experience of Jesus that the earliest disciples and apostles had that then led them out. I mean, we're told in one of the healings, I didn't even get to go into it, but literally that Jesus is there as he comes down right before that sermon. Jesus is standing there and the crowd is there because they all want Jesus to heal them. And we're told that like a pulse of energy goes out from Jesus and heals the crowd instantaneously. And then he turns and starts talking. Like when you see that, you live through that, it changes everything. When you have an experience of someone's life transformed that takes root and they were headed this way, and all of a sudden they're going that way and everything's different, it changes. And if you've never had that or you've never experienced it, come talk to me, because that's my life. I mean, I speak of these experiences as a practitioner. I was a person headed in the wrong direction, doing the wrong things. And God literally changed my life. Oftentimes I just wake up going, wow, like who would ever thought God would lift me like this to do the things I get to do every day, to get a front row seat to watch God change the world. I got the best job on the planet. It's fun. Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. Why is it important to the text that he refers to himself as the Son of Man instead of the Son of God? If we can figure that out, we can write a doctorate and retire. I want to know. I'm going to ask him. So the church has always taken it as there was a whole bunch of things in the 4th century where it was kind of front page news about, the fancy term for it is the hypostatic union, and understanding how Jesus is fully human and fully divine and how that's necessary. Remember when I talked just briefly about how could he forgive sin when not only would he have to be God, but there is a sacrifice necessary? I was saying it that way to intentionally set up something in a few more chapters, that Jesus is going to be the sacrifice, right? And that's an important part of that understanding, because Jesus has to be fully the Son of God and fully the Son of Man to be able to be the sacrifice. The title Son of Man seems to be incredibly important, specifically to Luke, because Luke wants to be clear that he's not just son of Abraham, which would have been a contrast title given to some people at that time who claimed that they were saved through their Abrahamic faith, through being a descendant of Abraham. So he's contrasting that to say Jesus died for all humanity so that the entire world can be saved. But if you can find me somebody that has like a good 3-sentence answer to why the Son of Man and why at certain times, man, I mean, like I've looked quite a bit. I haven't found what I would call a satisfactory answer, and most of them are full on. There's a book by a guy named Hasker called "Solved by Sacrifice." That's more of a it's a little philosophical too, but it's probably the best treatment of this I've seen, and that would be the one. But it's a couple hundred pages, so I tried to summarize it the best I could. But thank you. Great question. And I think it's one that anybody who gives a thorough reading of the text is going to have that same question. It has to be answered. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Yes. Oh. Okay, so yeah, let me repeat that for the people on Zoom. So that's a great question. So it's interesting that there seems to be, or there is a sequence to the path in which Jesus heals the man who is let down through the roof. And you're going to see this in several different healings. He's going to heal the sin and then heal the body, or heal the body and then heal the sin. And we don't, is there an intentionality with that? I think that the way I think I actually put it in the slides this way, my personal belief is that he upsets the Pharisees and then he shows them his authority. And I believe his healing of that man is a compassion for that man, but I really think he's making a point. That's right. That's right. Yeah, he ignores the question because he's God, right? So again, if you don't have a view of the divinity of Christ, you're going to have a problem with Jesus in the pages. If you're okay with the divinity of Christ, you're going to be like, well, what's Brad worried about talking about all that? But I want you to know that for this, probably the best scholarship on this is going to be, there's a book called, oh gosh, what is it? The Real Jesus, and it's by Luke Timothy Johnson, where he goes and kind of shows the damage done by the kind of the Jesus seminar and some of the group that was kind of going at the scholarship that had pervaded before, and they were really in a kind of a course to kind of overly humanize Jesus. I mean, Jesus is fully human, fully divine, but they were trying to make claims about early Christians and what was in the Bible to say that somehow Jesus wasn't really divine, and and that the early Christians didn't think he was divine, and I just think that's nuts. It just flies on the face of like what we read, and also too, like, if they didn't really think he was divine, why did they build all the churches? Like, what were they? It doesn't make sense. Now, to say there's like no development in the early church, that'd be false too. Like, oh, we always thought that from day one. Well, that's nonsensical too. But some of the weirdness, there was a great PBS special. If you want to really hear their argument, it was called From Jesus to Christ. And all you need to know is really in the title. They tried to say, well, it's this man, and then these people of power wanted him to be divine. That's just flat out false. If anything, it's the opposite. I mean, read Luke. Jesus is obsessed with the poor, and he overcomes the rich and powerful to help the poor. He's Robin Hood, not Dick Dastardly. Other questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So, great question, Robbie. Let me repeat it for those online. So, the scribes and the Pharisees. So, we get the scribes and the Pharisees, the scribes and the Pharisees. What's going on for the scribes that are to record? Yeah, in my slide, I probably make it sound like that's what they do. They're going to be very similar. I mean, in some of their belief, they're hopeful that are the scribes. I probably didn't give them enough attention. I mean, they want a Messiah. They want the word to be correct. They want all of this to be true in a law-following way. They want all of this realized. They're there because they're also important people culturally, and also too. I mean, I don't know about you, but like if I'm slaving away at a book 24/7, writing, copy, and all that, and somebody said, there's a Galilean preacher, we're going to go try to bust him. Like, yeah, I'll go, like get me up from the desk. Let's go. But also, too, I'm sure the Pharisees want him there because who knows the law better than the people who transcribe it all the time? And in fact, they're at the top of Masada, and to this day, they've got people who transcribe the Torah. When you go, you see them there doing that. And they actually are different rabbis who do that for seasons, and then they go back out and serve in different places. So it's also part of how they bring it in to then share it out. Yeah. Yeah. Right. That's right. That's right. Yes. So let me try to summarize that, Robbie, and you can help me get it right? So you can be my scribe right now. But just to make sure I got it. So y'all are doing a books study about the Old Testament through the eyes of a rabbi, and they're talking about how in their tradition they have the Torah divided so that you read through it in 52 weeks, which is appropriate and good. And what they do is they have somebody that even as they're reading is helping them make sure they don't lose their place and that they get every word correct so that it's properly done. And are the scribes functioning in a role like that? I would say absolutely yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. But here it's more of a title. I mean, so the other thing about the scribes too is they're going to have things like the scribes are the ones who wear scrolls on them all the time. And so there's going to be a scene where they also, the more modern one, they'll have them on like their forehead now, but mostly it was on their wrist. But there's a point where they ask Jesus a question about the law, and Jesus responds in a way that we're just crazy. Like he says, well, what do you say it is? Right? Well, it's because the response Jesus is going to give is the Shema, and the guy talking to him has it on his wrist, right? Yeah, he's like, you got it right there, hanging from you. And you mean you? I mean, it's what I call how to say that it's the issue of needlepoint Christianity, right? Needlepoint Christianity. So we take a verse that we like, right? And we sew it on something. So we have this beautiful scripture visible in our home, right? I got them everywhere in my house. They're all over the place. And it's beautiful and I love it. And it's a good reminder, but has it been sown in my heart? Like, do I live like that? That's the issue with the faith. It's not do I put it on the outside, right? It's not whether or not I put a Jesus sticker on my car. It's not bad to like love your church and put one on the car so people know to come to MDMC, right? I'm all for advertising, but if it's not actually in our heart, your heart love of people will be what draws people to Jesus in this church more than any advertising campaign can ever do, right? So, yeah. Other questions? These are great. Any questions on Zoom? I hope I didn't give anybody a pain in the brain. Everybody doing okay? I hope it was the text, because I mean, the text is really, I hope Jesus gave us all something to think about for sure. But I really encourage you to take some time and reread this part, because it is worthy of all the time we can give it for sure. It's all red letter stuff. Oh yeah, Linda? Yeah. Oh, right. Oh, yeah. That's a great question. Right. So Linda said, and thank you, because I'll make this point tonight too. Linda said that the Romans did not like, I said the Romans did not like the Pharisees. She was reminding me of that statement, but she was trying to understand if they loved the law so much, why was that a problem for the Romans? The problem was they didn't love the Roman law. They loved the Jewish law and the Torah. And so I'm sorry, I need to be more clear with that. And so the Jewish law and the Torah prevented them from observing Roman law. Now, the Romans were learning how to respect them, but occasionally what would happen would be they would get kind of a crazy pharaoh, like maybe you've heard of, there was Nero, there was a guy before him, there was Claudius, and Claudius slaughtered a pig in the holiest of holies and did some stuff to demonstrate his power over the Jewish people and caused a couple of wars and those kind of things. And so the Romans didn't do well with anyone who didn't do what they said. They were very dominant in that way. No, it was more of a physical dominance in their way. Yeah. All right. Good. Other questions? These are great. All right. Well, y'all have a great day. And hey, you can also always email me if you got other questions and stuff like that. I do try to get back to all of them. I can't always get all of them in a timely manner. Sometimes it takes a little bit because I get several. So a lot of fun. Great questions, though. Thank y'all.